Welcome to the Vintage Ballers podcast. I'm your host, Brad Coreno. And on today's episode, we have Mario West joining the show. Mario played basketball at Georgia Tech, where he was a part of the 2004 Final Four team. He then played 4 years in the NBA for Atlanta and New Jersey. He has authored a book called Defend the Dream, and he is currently the director of Off the Court for the MBPA. So without further ado, please welcome Mario West. But I wanted to go back and take it back to your youth. And I know you were born in Alabama, and then did you move to Georgia?
Yeah, moved to Georgia, when I was 9.
When did you fall in love with the game of basketball?
I fell in love with the game of basketball at the age of 7. I started playing basketball at the Boys and Girls Club in Huntsville, Alabama. It was a Boys and Girls Club right across the street from where I grew up in the projects in Mason Court. It's unfortunate, man, that now they have torn down the projects, as they continue to expand and grow, and subsequently turned the Boys and Girls. I mean, it's demolished as well. But that was an outlet for me and for my family members, like my cousins and just everyone in the projects, to kind of stay off the street. Like, they had a curriculum, tutors, they had games, and it was just a fun environment. So right then and there, and I grew up idolizing MJ, of course.
I was going to ask you about that because you're about my age. I'm 38. So, back in that era, we were too young to really remember Magic and Bird in the 80s. I remember them because I have an older brother that was a basketball guy, but I didn't really get to watch a lot of Magic and Bird live. I saw them at the end of their careers, but they weren't the same player. MJ, I pretty much saw the majority of his career, especially in his prime. And I remember, I'm from Cleveland, so he broke my heart many times. But I remember those games. The shot. I was 6 years old when that happened. I remember my dad and brother watching it, and we were just devastated. And the Cavs had a heck of a squad back then, and we just couldn't get past MJ. Nobody could. Yeah, that was a whole different level. But I was going to ask you, growing up in Georgia, did you follow Dominique or the Hawks at all, or was it strictly MJ?
No, it was still Michael Jordan. I did follow the Hawks, obviously, moving to Georgia. How could you not? And Dominique and Mookie Blaylock and those Steve Smith, like
Kevin Willis.
Kevin Willis. And I remember, rooting for obviously Michael Jordan and the Bulls because, Michael Jordan, right? But then the Hawks were playing them in the I can't remember, first round, second round playoffs, and I remember Michael Jordan getting one by Mutombo and waving that finger. But you know what, man, it's been one of those things, man, where just looking back over my life and thinking about the people that have had influence in my life, and me watching Dominique and then playing with the Hawks. And I got to shout out to Dominique, man, because every time I see him, I shake his hand and I thank him, because he was someone that advocated for me, being on the team, but also just taking individual time. A Hall of Famer like Dominique Wilkins is spending time with Mario on the court, showing him some tips and some moves and stuff like that, man. Like, that just meant the world to me. So I got to shout out to him, man, because I was the last guy on the team. I wasn't, a starter or even, given to even have any playing time. And to have someone of that caliber, of that stature, just to say 2 words to me, you better, I was listening. And so I'm really appreciative of him doing that.
That's really cool. Yeah, Neek was, people, for the younger kids who never saw him play, he really doesn't get a lot of press now. You don't hear his name a lot, but back then he was a superstar. No doubt about it. One of the greatest pure scorers and dunkers in NBA history, and just an all-around superstar back in the 80s and early 90s. And for those who didn't see him play, check out his highlight reels. He was the human highlight film for a reason. So,
Absolutely.
It's funny with your Georgia Tech connections, and just Georgia in general. I have a lot of GT connections up here in Cleveland because Mark Price played for, the Cavs, of course, and he's, GT legend, love the guy. And I also had Kenny Anderson on the podcast, another GT guy, and, Point Guard University, basically, down at GT. And Kenny's showcase is in Cleveland. He has a showcase he runs. Ian Cunningham, going to give a shout out to, runs his showcase here. So again, a lot of GT connections here in Cleveland. And it was really cool to have him, Kenny on the podcast and talk to him. And, I want to take it back to your high school days before GT. You went to Douglas County High School, and you were the player of the year in the county in 2002, correct?
Yeah.
And what was that like? Obviously, at that point, when did you realize that you could play major college basketball?
Honestly, it was, well, first of all, it was always a dream. I had a uncle, Howard Pride, who was named Mr. Basketball in the state of Alabama. He was also
Wow.
another huge influence, in my life during that time. I had also a cousin, Daryl Blackburn, who went to Alabama and played football. And so those two figures that were directly in my family that I went to go see them play, so that's when really where the dream was conceived. And honestly, it was just something that I just really, I would say I believed. I mean, middle school, early high school. I think one of the things that helped me was playing varsity as a freshman. Kind of made me realize, like, hey, man, you get an opportunity that a lot of guys are allowed to do. Number one, because of the talent, but also just because of the size and things like that. But with great opportunity, there's responsibility, right? And so I had to work and continue to develop. And so as I progressed along, I felt like every single year I got better and better. So that dream of what I've had so long ago to follow, kind of like in the footsteps of my cousin and my uncle that I mentioned, it became more of a reality. So during my senior year, as you mentioned, me being the player of the year in the county, it was like, okay, man, like, hey, man, you got something here. But I didn't have the offers that I thought I would have had. You know what I'm saying? And that was kind of, crushing, so to speak. You have a little ego and everything like that. And that was kind of crushing. I went to some team camps. I went to Clemson. I felt like I did really well. And, when you get that first letter, it's like, oh, wow. And I had the shoebox and I'm collecting these letters. So I would really say, to answer your question, really, like I said, as I progressed along, but during my sophomore year in high school, started to get that first letter and those letters starting to roll in. And so it was like, yeah, created a little buzz. So
And Mario, was Georgia Tech always one of your top choices, or were you looking around at Clemson's and other teams in the ACC?
Georgia Tech, just because of from an academic standpoint, and then also I never wanted to be home, but I didn't want to be too far away from home. And I felt like Georgia Tech was the best situation. They had Coach Hewitt, who I was a huge fan of. I remember being in school and coming home and watching them during like the ACC tournament and then also during the tournament. And I remember them playing in the dome. And I remember catching part of that game. And that's kind of like, was like, wow, like I really saw myself, playing on the court and being in that moment. And, you just kind of pictured that and then going out, later on that day and practicing in the driveway. So yeah, Georgia Tech from that standpoint. But more importantly, I wanted to go to a big D1 school. Like I felt like for me, I wanted to measure myself to my cousin and my uncle who had received a lot of accolades, what I'm saying, for their athletic ability. And I wanted to that was kind of like my barometer. That was my measuring stick, what I mean, so to speak. And so for me, Georgia Tech, man, was just a win-win situation. It was going to give me everything that I wanted academically and from an athletic standpoint of playing, as you mentioned, in the ACC.
And it's interesting you mentioned too about being, not being at home, but not being too far. I have a lot of friends, a lot of people felt the same way, I think, going to college. They wanted to be further away from their hometown, but not, 5 states away. So
Right.
that would have been the perfect mix. Now going in there, obviously you have Chris Bosh as a senior, a future NBA Hall of Famer. You have a slew of guys, coming in with you or around that time with, the Will Bynums and those guys. Jarrett Jack. I mean, you guys were loaded back then. And I remember the '04 championship game vividly against against Connecticut, Okafor and those guys. But before we get to that, what was it like coming in and playing with all those? I mean, you had, I think, 6 or 7 guys that made it to the NBA in your span, in the years you were there. So did you, realize those teams were special even, right when you were coming in as a redshirt freshman, or did it take time? Because I think it was your sophomore year you went to the championship game. So Coach Hewitt and all, what did you think when you first got there? And did you think we could actually make a run at a championship with this team?
Well, I got to be honest, I really didn't know any of the guys, in particular, the guys that I came to school with. So, funny story, I wore number 4 in college. That was my basketball number. And I wore that number because that was, well, I'll take that back. I wore number 4 in high school. I'm sorry. I wore number 4 in high school because that was my uncle's number that he wore, who went to Vanderbilt. He wore number 4. When he went on to college, he changed his number, but I wanted to keep my number at Georgia Tech. And I remember the assistant coach, Dean Keener, saying, hey, Mario, what number would you like? And I told him number 4. And he said, hey, man, we already got, Chris Bosh that's going to, that's his number, you know. And for me, being naive and a little cocky, you know, I believe in myself. So I said, you know what, coach? I said, man, tell him, man, I'll play him one-on-one for that number. And coach, you know, he laughed it off. He was like, no, man, that's his number. Mind you, Chris is a scholarship. He's a 5-star recruit, going to be a one and done, could really come out of high school. And here it is, a guy that's walking on to the team that doesn't even have a scholarship, talking about, you know, I'll play this 5-star recruit. So I remember getting on the campus and my first time seeing Chris, and I'm like, he's like, hey, my name is Chris Bosh. And I'm like, okay, I see. Hey, man, that number 4, man, hey, you're going to do some special things with that number 4. So ultimately, they gave me number 5, and I wore number 5. But to answer your question, like, I didn't know. But I will say the person that did know was our leader, and that was Coach Hewitt. Coach Hewitt knew exactly what he got. And I think he and his staff did a phenomenal job of player development, getting guys to better, but more importantly, to buy in. Because as you mentioned, we had guys that can fill up stat sheets. We had guys that can score. We had guys that can do defend. We had guys that can do so many different things. And he was able to control everyone's ego and get the best out of them collectively so that we can achieve one thing. After the first year with Chris Bosh, you know, and I started to see the things that we had and everything like that. And then we had my big brother, Clarence Moore. He came back and joined the team, who was very instrumental because he provided that physicality, that toughness. He added to what we already had. I was like, you know what, we got something very, very special. And even when we made our tournament run, you know, we weren't like getting too high. We didn't get, you know, too low or anything. Obviously, we were winning games, but we were like, okay, look, man, like, wow. And then I think when we got to Kansas, we were like, man, you know what? We can actually win it all. You know what I'm saying? So it was a bit of a shock to us too as well. Not that we weren't good enough, but just, I mean, it's a lot of things that got to go on for you to make it all the way to the national championship. You're talking about injuries, the ball has to bounce your way. I mean, in our first game, I think against Northern Iowa or something like that, we only won maybe by like 5 points. Like, it's a dogfight. It's all about matchups. So a lot of different things have to go into play and work in your favor for you just to reach the final. Anybody can get beat on any given night.
And that's a great point. I mean, that's the beauty of college basketball. And I think that's why with college football, we always see that, you know, it's such a small tournament with 4 teams that you don't really have that magic necessarily. And, you know, it's a great sport, but that's why so many people are attracted to college basketball, the postseason, just because anything can happen. We've seen, you know, 2 seed, 1 seed get upset. So I think that, and like you said, the ball has to bounce your way. You have to have some luck along the way, you know, even if you are a great team. So, you know, you guys made a heck of a run that year. And when you talked about Coach Hewitt, what are some of the things he taught you over your 5 years at Georgia Tech?
Number one, toughness. You know, Coach Hewitt is I'm a product of my environment, right? So Coach Hewitt is, you know, playing for him is like the school of hard knocks. Discipline, 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 followed by toughness. You know what I mean? And part of being disciplined is you got to be tough. You got to be tough enough to be disciplined. I think that's probably one of the biggest thing. Obviously, off the court, you know, carrying yourself in the right way and making sure that you're doing everything in the classroom. Because I remember seeing Coach Hewitt, and hopefully, you know, he doesn't see this, but Coach Hewitt came. He used to wear these little short gold shorts and would be ashy. Coach Hewitt, these long legs. I mean, checking classes. You know what I mean? Like, I remember the first time, I'm like, wow, the head coach is actually here checking my class to make sure, like, he didn't care if you were a walk-on or if you were a starter. Like, everyone treated the same, and he held everyone accountable. And that's something that, you know, I think always sticks out in my mind. And that's the type of respect that he demanded from his players, from his coaching staff. He demanded that from everybody. And, you know, if you could play, he didn't care if you were walk-on or what, you know what I'm saying, your status was. Like, he was going to put the best players out there, and he's going to reward those who played hard. And that's something that I will always be indebted for to Coach Hewitt, because he changed my life, man. I'm going to be real. And I love him to this day. We still have an amazing relationship. And so Coach Hewitt has changed a lot of lives, not only myself, but he got Mario West, a walk-on, to graduate from Georgia Tech to get his degree in business management and make it to the NBA. So shout out to Coach Hewitt, man, and all the players that played for him, man, because he's a hell of a coach.
It's, you know, and I love hearing all that, because you talk about the discipline aspect of it. I think in any part of life, you know, when someone is hard on you like that, it could be tough. It could be it could be a real pain in the ass, quite frankly. But when you look back at people like that, especially when they do it in the right way, it really does make an impact on your life, because discipline is everything. I mean, if you're not disciplined, you're not going to be very successful, whatever you do. So there's not many people who lack discipline who are wildly successful. It just doesn't happen that much. So,
Right.
like you said, he's setting you up for your whole life, and not just playing in the NBA, but beyond basketball. And obviously, with what you've accomplished, it's obvious that he did that. So that's a huge compliment to him. And going back to '04 now, real quick, in the championship run, take us through that tournament. And you kind of talked a little bit about it, but going into that tournament, you guys fairly confident. You obviously have a nice squad, but did you foresee making it to the Final Four championship game? Was that something that you guys thought like, okay, there's a potential here, or were you just thinking one game at a time?
So I'm gonna take it a step further. This is preseason, maybe like the first day of practice or something like that, and we're all this was either before practice or after practice. We're kind of centered around the half court circle, and Coach Hewitt is in the middle. And I think we were stretching, so I can't remember if that was before or after. And I remember Coach Hewitt saying to us, like, "Look, we're going to make it to the Final Four." Like Coach Hewitt actually put that out there and told the team, like, this is what we have. So I think early on, it was Coach Hewitt, just reminding us of what we have, but hey, we still got to go and work for it. And so during that year, beating UConn in Madison Square Garden in the preseason NIT was big for us. And we went on a run and was ranked and everything like that. So it was kind of like, wow, everything that Coach Hewitt is saying is kind of coming to fruition. So now you fast forward, now we're in the tournament, and all that is coming back into play of what he originally told us in the beginning. But during the tournament, Coach Hewitt reminded us, like, look, you guys are not here by chance. Like, I expected you to be here. Now I need you guys to know and believe that you belong here. But he didn't let us get too far ahead in terms of like, hey, man, we're going to make it to the Final Four, even though we had that underline, like we knew that, but it was like one game at a time. It was one possession at a time. Again, that goes back to the discipline and, like I said, never getting too high and too low. He kept us grounded in that aspect. But I mean, like you said, man, magic happens, man, and we had an unbelievable run during that time.
And the Final Four, what was that experience like, Mario? I mean, how many people can say they made it to the Final Four? Not many. What was it like, and what was it like playing UConn in the championship game and having the national spotlight on you? That's a huge deal.
I'll tell you one of the coolest things, man. Being in the hotel in San Antonio and the Riverwalk and everything like that. First time I actually saw Pat Riley, and we were on the elevator together. And I'm like, man, Pat Riley's like 6'5", 6'6". Pat Riley is tall. You see people on TV, and I'm like, man, this is the coach that the coach Magic, and obviously, went on and had the championships with D Wade and everything like that. Like, this is the guy. This is Pat Riley. It doesn't get no bigger and better than that. But just seeing all the fans, there supporting, the team and everything like that, man, like, it's a lot going on, man. It's just so much that, now in today's era where you have Instagram and you have really the social media aspect where you can really, really capture. You know what I'm saying? Back then, I had the little camera, little Walmart camera, and you taking pictures and stuff like that. Now you got the new technology where you can just iPhone and you can save. And so I wish we could go back to that moment, or I wish, social media and the different things, because it would have been blown up to a whole different magnitude. You know what I mean? But unbelievable. It's really can't put into words what that was like. I just remember just getting the gear and the shoes and just all the attention, like everybody. And for a guy that didn't even play, but just to be there in that moment and just actually see, this is something that I saw, clips of. Remember Michael Jordan winning his national championship. I remember following Duke. Like, I was a big Duke guy and watching Duke and Jason Williams, the Fab Four, Jason Williams, and all those guys. Even the Lethal Weapon 3 from Georgia Tech. You know what I mean? And so you see these moments and see these clips on TV, and now you're actually in this moment, and you're like, wow, this is what it's like. And facing off against UConn, obviously we were confident because we beat, UConn early on, what I'm saying, in the year. I know there were, discussions Okafor, had some back issues and stuff like that, man. But that team was loaded, man, and it was very, very intense, man. It was very, very intense. Like, there was grown men out there competing, like their lives depended on it for that game. I'll tell you that.
And what was that like, that energy of that game? Was it, I mean, it had to be something, I mean, and, again, a national championship game in any major sport like that it doesn't get any better than that. Was it, how intense was it?
it's a surreal moment. It's a surreal moment because it's like you think everything that you've done, all the preseason conditioning, all the games and everything that you went through now has went now, and it comes down to this final game. So it's like going into the game, it's like, wow, either we're going to win or we're going to lose. Somebody has to win and someone has to lose. And it's all going to be over, after that. And just feeling the pressure of, you want to win so bad, for the school and for your family, you want to represent, and just thinking like, man, every shot, every whistle, every step you make, it's just like, it's different. You know what I mean? Like I remember even being in warm-ups, it's like, man, wow, I was just so nervous. You know what I'm saying? Even doing layup line. How many times have you did layup line? Like trying to stay focused and remember this is another game, all the preparation and things that you've done before to get you to this point, you just got to stick to it. And I think that's sometimes, you get caught up in the energy and in the moment, who's there. You're seeing Pat Riley, you're seeing, there's scouts there. You just know that there's alumni there, there's, guys that you've looked up to, that you've seen, countless times on TV, there to support you, all eyes on you. You're under this microscope. And like you said, man, the energy is just, you can't duplicate that, man. And you would wish every school, every player would get to experience that, but it's unfortunate that they don't. And so when you do, man, you make the most of it. And these why people continue to tell tales of when they were there in that moment, these memories and things you hold on for a lifetime.
And Mario, I think it's important to touch on the fact, obviously you guys lost that game, and we always hear about people who win and what it feels like to win, but what does it feel like to get that far and lose?
It hurts. It does. It hurts. It stings, and it takes a long time for you to, recover from that, because that's something that, obviously that's what you work for. You know what I mean? That's why you did all the things that you did in preparation, leading up into that point. But at the same time, it's something that you're able to build on. And that's what Coach Hill reminded us. Hey, you had that taste, just a little taste of what it's like. So now we got to go in next year and finish the job and get it done. Obviously, we didn't do that the following year. We had some injuries and things like that, just kind of, put a nail in, what we were planning to do and what we felt we could have achieved, because we were coming back, pretty much the same team. I mean, we were missing a key part in Clarence Moore and a couple of guys, but we had the nucleus there together. So, but that's just what makes college basketball. Like, to win a national championship is tough, but to go back to back, like I think about my old teammate Al Horford and what he did at Florida. You know what I mean? Like, any team, college team that wins a championship, okay, that's cool. But to do it back to back, man, incredible. And so it was something that was definitely motivating for the off season. And, guys went, we had a chip on our shoulder. Obviously, like I said, we didn't finish everything and go out the way we wanted. But, that's the game of basketball. Somebody wins, somebody loses.
It is. And I think losing, when you look back at it, I mean, obviously you want to win. I mean, let's be honest about it. But I think sometimes the losing almost teaches you more, just because that pain, you learn what that's like to feel that pain. And, I think it makes you a little tougher as you go along. And you can, I feel like I know a lot of people when they're young, they wanted everything sports wise. They're always winning, and they get to high school or college and they're not winning as much, and they don't know how to deal with it. So I think it's, it's crucial, I think, to learn how to have a painful loss every now and then like that to experience. I mean, even LeBron lost, I think, his sophomore, junior year in high school, in the state championship game, and they were loaded, and they lost. So it taught him a lot. And the next year they came back and won it. So, moving forward now, your NBA prospects, obviously you're going into the 2007 draft. Did you think you could be drafted? What were your thoughts on that?
So I didn't have any workouts. I didn't have one single workout in the NBA draft. I did, however, have this unbelievable, just like this glimmer of hope in this faith. Not trying to preach, but in the Bible, I'm a firm believer. Everything that's been given to me comes from the man above. I've been blessed, and one of the scriptures come to mind. It says, if you have enough faith as a mustard seed, you can say to that mountain, move, and it shall be moved. And so for me, I had that mustard seed faith that somehow I would be the last pick in the draft, the 2007 draft. And I remember vividly, I'm pretty sure, I'm confident that it was Vernon Hamilton, who was the last pick of the 2007 draft out of Clemson. Very, very quick guard. Shouts out to Vernon Hamilton. But somehow I just felt like, I didn't have any workouts, but I just felt like, man, just looking at Georgia Tech, somebody somewhere saw me and saw that I could be of value to the team. But obviously that didn't happen. And I remember, watching it at my parents' house. I was laying on the couch, and it was like, man, you know what? But hey, got to figure another way. Got to figure something else out and how to, make this happen. And I was also thinking that the slam dunk competition that I had participated in and won during the Final Four, that was like my audition. And that's why I took that so serious. And I was just, like I said, just hoping that somewhere someone saw me, had a discussion or something. I was on someone's scouting report, even if I was the last man on the list, then, but it didn't happen.
And how did you? So take us through the next few months and year, and until you made it to the Hawks. Like, how, what was that process like?
So I had a really, really amazing agent, Wallace Prather. Really have to shout out, him and the conversations that. So he had already at the time was representing Josh Smith, with the Atlanta Hawks, and it also helped that I was a local guy. And so they said, hey, man, we'll give him a tryout to make the summer league team. Like, he's probably not going to make it, but hey, we'll give him a shot. And if any man wants more than an opportunity, he's ungrateful. That's just my opinion. And so, I said, hey, yeah, I'm going to take this opportunity to try out for the Hawks Summer League team. At the time, Summer League was out in Salt Lake City, in the Salt Lake City Mountain Review. It was out there. And so it was like 3 days. They had just drafted AC Law and Al Horford. The cool thing about AC Law is that I met him because he was participating in the three-point competition during the Final Four. And I was, again, in the slam dunk competition. So we had opportunity just to kind of, meet. And obviously, AC Law and what he did at Texas A&M and following him, I mean, it was like really, really dope to meet him, in person after following him and what he did throughout his college career. And again, Al Horford. And so I had an opportunity, man. And that is something that really just shows the type of grit that you have to have. They telling you pretty much not going to make it, but for you to still kind of block that out and go out and do what you need to do to make it. And I remember I did really well on the first day. The second day, I put too much pressure on myself, and I didn't do what I was doing the first day to kind of stand out, because that's what it's all about in these moments. Not doing more than what you're known for doing, but standing out in terms of your effort and just doing some of the intangibles, the little things. And that's what I did the first day. Not that I didn't do it and I didn't have the same effort. It's just like I just wasn't thinking the game. So case in point, I'm trying to think of my guy's name, Earl Calloway. He went to Indiana, very, very quick guard. I remember you do one-on-one full court drills, right? I'm a defensive guy. He was blowing by me. I mean, I'm giving straight line drives to the basket and stuff. This is on the second day. But on the first day, I was locking that up. Like I was cutting people off and everything like that and doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so the third day, they were making cuts each day. The third day, and they would put I think a pink tag or something like that in your locker to kind of let you know, like, hey, come see the coach. And then he would kind of let you know that you had been cut or whatever. After that second day, I rushed out. I didn't even shower. I went back to the hotel to shower because I was so disgusted in myself. I turned off my phone, didn't want to talk to anybody. Remember getting down on my knees and saying a prayer like, God, please allow me to do what I know I'm capable of the next day. The next day, when I say I went and balled out, I balled out that third day. It's interesting because the slam dunk competition, Brent Pentway, who went to the University of Michigan, who they named Air Georgia, phenomenal athlete, 6'8", long arms, could jump out of the gym. He was projected to win the slam dunk competition, and rightfully so. He was by far the best dunker in the competition. It was just fortunate enough that I, got a break and I had, I think, a better routine. I was more focused because he missed his dunks. So fast forward now, guess who's there trying out for the Hawks Summer League team? Brent Pentway. So he really wanted some revenge. So on that last day, I remember there was an opportunity where he was on a fast break. I don't know why he didn't go and dunk the ball, but he went to go lay it up, and I chased it down and I pinned it to the backboard, and I grabbed the ball. After blocking his shot, I start the fast break, go down, bounce pass, layup. Like I was doing, making multiple effort plays. And I remember at the time, Coach Fizdale, shout out David Fizdale, who's assistant coach for the Los Angeles Lakers now. He told me, he said, man, you were by far the best player out here today. He said, honestly, man, I don't know what happened. This is verbatim what he said. I remember like it was yesterday. He said, you were actually cut yesterday. We had actually cut you. I don't know, you just didn't get the note or whatever, but hey, you came back today and you showed us something. He said, because of that, you're going to summer league with us. He said, we only wanted to take 13 players or something, but now we're taking 14. He said, hurry up and pack your bags and get ready to hop on the plane.
Wow, that's a crazy story. So
Right.
you were actually cut, and and you showed up. That's incredible.
Yeah, man. And for me, that's why I believe in a higher power, and I believe in divine intervention in everything that I've been given. You know what I'm saying? I dedicate and thank God for. And I say that to say humbly because things can look one way. You know what I'm saying? But I just believe that what's for you is for you. And just thinking about my story and how things aligned for me, even though it wasn't perfect, like I didn't get a workout, didn't get drafted, all these things that I wanted and I felt like I needed for me to reach my goal. But God is like, no, you know what? You don't need that. I got you. Just sit back and watch. Just have faith. Do what you need to do. Continue to work hard, but more importantly, continue to believe. And those interlock together. And then, hey, it's going to open up, the way you want it to work out.
It's a great point. Opportunity meets belief, really. I mean, and you took advantage of both. And I think that's something, a lesson for a lot of people out there, because there's a lot of people in your shoes, whether it's in sports or other positions and for a career, that might be on the outside or might think they're not going to make it to a certain position or whatever it might be. But a lot of these people tend not to have belief in themselves as much and that's a huge part of it. And it's not being arrogant, it's just being confident. There's a difference between arrogance and confidence. And I think you obviously come off very confident and you knew what you could do. And that's an incredible story. The fact that he actually said, we cut you, but you came back and think about that. And what are the odds that you would play your best, game that next day, or you have your best day? That's a pretty eye-opening, story you just told. I love that. I never knew that.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate that. And for anyone listening, when they do listen, whether it's basketball, sports, or just anything, like my suggestion is it's just the little things. Like I didn't do anything spectacular. I didn't do anything that wasn't in my norm of things doing. You know what I mean? In terms of like from a basketball standpoint, I wasn't out there shooting threes and it wasn't like I was getting buckets, but what I was known for was my energy and my effort and how that was contagious. You know what I'm saying? And it trickled down to the team. And so then when I got out to summer league, I just played harder than everybody. Like the thing that you do well, make sure that outshines and that you do that better than anyone else. And I feel like good things will happen. And so for me, it was just playing hard. I played harder than everyone. That's something that I prided myself on. And when I played hard, other guys on the team was like, yo, man, like let's step it up, man. Like I rock with him. Like I could play with him. He plays hard and it raises their level of play, even though they were more talented. But then it now, once you start to play harder, then that talent, raises up even more. And so it's like, it's just a perfect fit. And so I'm appreciative of Coach Fizdale and Billy King, the GM at the time too. And I got to shout out my second dad, Coach Woodson. Man, I love that guy.
Mike Woodson, yep.
I love Woody.
I was just going to say that he's quoted, about you actually as saying that you were the hardest working guy on the team of the Hawks in those couple of years you were there. And and a lot of teammates came and backed that up and said, you won't find a guy in this locker room. I can't remember if it was Bibby or somebody came out and said, you won't find a guy in this locker room who works harder than Mario West. So that has to be, that means a lot to you, I'm sure. But that shows your work ethic. I mean, just the fact you said, look, I might not be the most talented guy. I might not, be a Josh Smith or, Joe Johnson, but I can come and outwork anybody any day. And think about that. Look where it led you. And now look where you are in your life. And just from having that discipline and hard work and the belief, the combination, like you said, and taking advantage of opportunities and obviously you're a talented guy. You can't have no talent and make it to the NBA, but as opposed to maybe being a LeBron James or, a Steph Curry or guys who just have these unbelievable talents compared to someone who had to work their ass off to get to where they got to, like you did. I think it's a big, there's a lot of people, Mario, who are in your position right now. Not as many, there's not many LeBron James. Not many people are born 6'9", 6'8", 240 with that crazy skill set. Most people have to, to work to get to a certain point. And I think the fact that your teammates and Coach Woodson said that you were the hardest working guy on the team, that has to be a huge compliment for you.
No, absolutely. And like you said, it's something that I take pride in, but more importantly, it's something that I want others to understand. It's like, how can you close the gap? You know what I'm saying? You mentioned LeBron and you mentioned Steph and all those guys. And not to say that just because they're at an elite talent level, they don't work, because I know those guys
work.
No,
for sure.
Huge fan of those. But if you're not as talented, how can you kind of close the gap? And with your work ethic and how you work and how you prepare, things like that, that is something that my uncle told me this a long time ago. He said, they may be able to say that they're more talented than you, but they should never, ever say that they've outworked you. You know what I mean?
I
It's just
love that.
simple, every single day, man. And, whether it was sprints or whatever it was, it's something that I just believe in, just competing. You know what I'm saying? Like, just naturally, that's just something that I think just in my DNA, things that I've seen from my parents in terms of them working, my grandfather waking up at 4 in the morning to go to work and stuff like that. Things that I just seen throughout my life. And that, as I got into basketball, it was something that it just translated easily. You know what I mean?
And I think you make a great point too about, I mean, obviously even the Stephen LeBrons and the Kobe and Michael Jordans and Tom Brady's, because we knew they have natural talent, but the fact of the matter is they work just as hard as Mario West, and that's why they are what they are. They wouldn't be that if they were just average workers. Yeah, they'd still be in the NBA and be probably stars, but they wouldn't be at the level they're at now and winning championships and doing everything they're doing. They have your work ethic with their talents, and that's why, but that's very few people that have both.
Right.
And that's why you only have a few Steph Curry, LeBron, Tom Brady, et cetera. And I think just Kobe in his life and looking what I remember, MJ talking about when he was young, him asking him tips on his jump shot, and he was 19, 20. You think he'd be out clubbing and doing all, but they said he was all about just, I mean, he wanted to, learn his craft. And that's why he became what he became and won all those championships. So, those Hawks years, you guys had some very interesting teams, and we actually played you in Cleveland, and I think it was 2009 in the playoffs. And I was a little bit nervous because you got Joe Johnson he was people forget how great Joe Johnson was. And you had Josh Smith and Mike Bibby. And, I think Zaza was on that team and Horford, of course, and yourself. And it was a lot of talent. How fun was it playing with that team? And, take us back to that playoff series too, against a young LeBron James before he won any championships. And what was that like?
No, it was amazing. I'm gonna start off though, if you don't mind, the playoff series against the Celtics and taking them to 7 games. I think really gave us the confidence. Obviously the Celtics went on and they beat us 4-3 and going out, in a game 7 and winning the title that year. But that gave a young Hawks team the confidence, like, look, we can hang and we got something special here. You know what I'm saying? We just have to stay together, continue to build upon it. Almost reminds me of, when Jordan was chasing his first title and how he was getting knocked out, but he had a really, really good team and bounced back. But the thing about with LeBron and playing, especially in Cleveland in particular, and which I haven't been, is it still Quicken Loans?
It's different now. It's Rocket Mortgage. They call it the Rocket Mortgage something arena. I can't remember. They changed it a couple years ago.
Okay, but I wonder if the arena, like the setup, because it was like on the court, and then when you get off the court, it's almost like you're getting off a stage. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Sit down in the seats and everything like that. But LeBron, man, I mean, even when I see him to this day, man, we kind of laugh about the times that I've had to guard him. I remember him making a half-court shot, just getting in the game and having to pick up LeBron and him hitting a half-court shot. Not like he threw it, but he shot it like a free throw. Nothing but net. And we laugh about that and some of the things when, I'm guarding him and he's waving everybody else like mouse in the house, like, look, just clear it out. I'm about to take him one-on-one. But those teams were really, really good. And they just had our number. You know what I mean? Like they really did. They just had our number. Obviously, when you play someone of LeBron, Hall of Famer, and his stature and the attention that he draws, but he makes so much better. You know what I'm saying? It's like we can't like say, okay, LeBron, go and get yours and we're gonna shut everyone out. You know what I'm saying? Because he still finds a way to get everyone involved. And we got swept. You know what I mean? Like that was our Achilles heel. Even I think the following year, we got to the second round. And if it wasn't them, it was the Orlando Magic. You know what I mean? With Dwight Howard. You know what I mean? So just something that we struggled with. But those years, man, it was just phenomenal to see. And to be in that environment and how loud it gets, you know what I'm saying? Obviously playing on the road and being in that hostile environment. And like I said, I always refer back to when I was a kid and you see these things on TV and you're thinking like, wow, and now you're actually in this moment. You know what I'm saying? It's just so surreal. And just looking back and then obviously being at the Hawks games and, playing those games, man, the playoff against LeBron was just phenomenal. And that's something I cherish to this day and something that, I don't take for granted having the opportunity to play against, the best of the best, and in particular, arguably one of the greatest players ever to play the game of basketball, and having those special moments of guarding him and trying to keep him outside the paint, because LeBron is physically, he's just gifted. He's very, very smart. He's quick and just having that adrenaline. That's one thing that I remember, just being so energized and so pumped up before the game, and then getting those 30 seconds to 45 seconds in the game, giving Joe a quick blow so he doesn't get up his he doesn't pick up his second or third foul heading into halftime.
And Mario, you mentioned LeBron, just the physical gifts and the high IQ of LeBron. One of my buddies played high school basketball, LeBron, back at SVSM, and he was saying LeBron ruined high school basketball for him now, because any great prospect that comes up, he goes, I'll watch some of these guys in person, and they're just, he goes, it's not close. LeBron's just so much better. I mean, like, LeBron was a freak in high school, and people forget that Jordan and Shaq went and watched him play. I mean, you don't have MJ and Shaq watching you play unless you're pretty, at a different level. And he said that watching, I got to play with him every day in practice, and he started on that team. And he just told me, he just ruined it for me, because now any prospect that comes up, even though they might be great, but they're not LeBron. LeBron was so special, and he's a once in a generation, like Kobe and Jordan, those guys, they're just once in a generation talents. But the fact that you got to face him, and Mario, did you get to face Kobe too? Did you get to guard Kobe?
Absolutely.
What was that like?
It was great. Actually, if anyone's, like I said, watching, go onto YouTube and type in Kobe Bryant takes Mario West to school. So we're playing at home, against the Lakers. And I actually have like 34, 35 of my family members attending the game. I had bought a lot of tickets. The only game that my grandparents got to see me play in person in the NBA. And, it was a special moment for so many reasons, because I wasn't, going into each game. I didn't know if I was going to play or not, but I stayed ready. And so I actually got to play that game and actually had the opportunity to guard Kobe. And I know what Kobe's going to do. Like, I know that he's going to fade on me. Like, I know that, right? So I cut Kobe off, I moved my feet, and I'm sitting on his crossover. And I'm good about stealing crossover. That's one thing that I've developed a skill for. It's like, if you try to cross over in front of me, you may get me once, but my timing, as you're throwing that ball down, my hand is right there in what I call the cookie jar, and I'm picking that pocket. So I cut Kobe off, he crosses over, and I don't get it, and he turns and he gives me one of those. And like I said, I know the fade is coming, but I went, when he did that and he turned around the other way, vintage, classic Kobe, splash, all in my face. You know what I'm saying? It was good defense when you look at our contested, but, better offense, man. But I was fortunate enough, I had 2 buckets. I scored 4 points. I mean, a guy that wasn't expected to do much on the offensive end scored 4 points, guarded Kobe, and you know what? The most important thing, we won the game. Wow. So
that's a great story. And it's funny, I had a couple of guys in this program who also, guarded Kobe, and Ronnie Brewer is one of them. And he had a funny story about Kobe had scored. I think he was a rookie with like Paul Millsap and those guys. It was right around that time you would have been, early.
yeah.
And he said that Kobe had scored 30 some points in the quarter. And Jerry Sloan was just furious. And he's like, what, you guys are all scared of Kobe, blah, blah, blah. So he goes, he puts me in the game. He goes, I told Coach Sloan, I'm not scared of Kobe. He's just a man like anybody else. And then he put him in the game. And I guess Paul Millsap looked at him like, what do you just get yourself into? And he goes, I go out there, and he goes, I just got lucky because Kobe started missing, but it wasn't really, I don't know if it was because of my defense or not, but I just got lucky. And so it looked like I was the Kobe stopper, but he was just so dominant that, Kobe was on. And that year, especially, Mario, like, I think it was either 2009 or 2010 when Kobe was hitting like 3 or 4 game winners, in the season. He just kept hitting game winners over and over, one over D Wade and one in Milwaukee. And I mean, he was just, again, he was a Jordan-esque type of player where it was fun to watch him. And the fact that you got to play against both LeBron and Kobe, 2 of the greatest ever, and, 2 icons really, and the fact you got to guard them both, that's pretty special.
No, it is. It is. And it's something, like I said, that I don't take for granted, not a second that I was in the NBA, and then those moments make it even special. Obviously, being those guys who they are and what they've meant to the game, and the people that they've influenced. You still, to this day, who Kobe, he's still influencing. Obviously, LeBron, whenever he decides to hang it up, man, and the legacy that he's built, man, and just to have that small piece, to be a part of that journey and witness it, firsthand, is truly amazing.
And Mario, besides Kobe and LeBron, give me 1 or 2 other guys who are toughest to guard.
Man, I can give you several. I mean, we can start with guys that I played with. Joe Johnson at 6'7". Joe Johnson doesn't go fast. He goes at his own pace. He has unbelievable body control. Obviously, he's 6'7", but really, really, really strong. But you know, a lot of people, man, just don't know. Joe was a problem. Jamal Crawford. I
Oh yeah.
problems of trying to guard Jamal Crawford in practice. Brandon Roy was a nightmare that I had the opportunity to guard, man, and witness all the stuff that he has in his bag. Brandon Roy is a problem. Carmelo Anthony early, you know, when he was with Denver, because Carmelo and I remember reading Kobe's book and him giving a shout out to Carmelo because he's so strong and low and he gets you in that post and his footwork. I mean, Carmelo jab. I mean, and that shot is up. So those are some of the guys that really really come to mind. Obviously, you know, Kevin Durant, because of his length, I've had the opportunity to guard him too as well. It's like for me, for all those guys, the common theme that they have in common is that those guys have like 4 inches on me. You know what I mean? I'm 6'7", on average 4 inches in terms of height. And so once they get that shot up here, even though I'm contestant, they don't see me. So the thing that I try to do, I try to use my quickness and get up underneath those guys so I can kind of, you know, make them take an extra dribble more than they, you know, wanted to take, or make them, instead of going, you know, north to the basket, make them go back, make them go east and west. You know what I'm saying? And by then, maybe there's a double team or something to shot clock. You know what I mean? Just try to disrupt their rhythm. That was the only thing that I try to do, because you know those guys are going to shoot and they're going to shoot off. So, yeah.
And Mari, you mentioned Brandon Roy. What a shame with his career ending with all those injuries. I looked at a statistic recently, and it was about the Aldridge, Greg Oden, Roy team. You know, and they were hurt most of the time. But when they were together, I think they were like 54-13. I mean, it was it was unbelievable. And they would have, I think they would have won a championship if they all stayed healthy. But I mean, people forget how great Brandon Roy was. He was just, I mean, he a game winner. He was just a heck of a player. And because he got hurt, his career kind of faded and nobody really talks about him anymore. But for those few years he was, you know, when he was on his game, I mean, he would have been a Hall of Famer in my opinion. He was that good. And, you know, he just, unfortunately, injuries took him and Oden's career away, and he never got to see what that team could have been. But I always wonder if they stayed healthy based on their record. And they gave the Lakers problems back then because they had a lot of size, and they could, you know, they could stay with Bynum and Gasol, and you know, they had Roy, Kobe, and that would have been a very interesting series if they could have stayed healthy, but we never got to see it, unfortunately. Just like Yao and Tracy McGrady, we just never got to see ultimately what that could have looked like, you know, if they stayed healthy. But, you know, guarding all those guys, I mean, you mentioned either All-Stars or Hall of Famers, basically, and you know, it had to be unbelievable to guard those guys and to know that most of those guys were in the prime of their careers back then. So, you know, to face that kind of talent is, you know, I mean, I look now in the NBA and I don't know what it's like to guard a Kevin Durant. I mean, Durant, basically a 7-footer who can shoot all over the court, and guys like the, you know, Greek Freak and these physical specimens, and Steph Curry. I mean, I'm watching Steph now, Mario. I can't believe how dominant he is now. I really thought, I have to say, I didn't think he would. I thought he was going to start fading away. He's unbelievable. I mean, I'm watching him like this kid just gets better and better, and he's hitting these crazy shots. He's great off the ball like Reggie Miller was, and it's just unbelievable watching some of the talent. But so getting back to, you know, after your NBA days, and you went overseas and played in the D League for a while, but I want to talk about overseas because I've had several players on the podcast who played overseas, and I think a lot of the people who watch this get a kick out of hearing the stories, because we don't know a lot about what it's like to play overseas. I mean, here everyone's so focused on college basketball or the NBA. So give us your experience of playing. I think it was the Philippines and you know, Italy and places like that. What was it like, and what were the challenges you faced playing overseas?
Yeah, so my first taste of being overseas, there was the lockout, and then I had an opportunity to go into the Dominican Republic for like a month and play over there. The Dominican Republic, beautiful, but in the same breath, I mean, it's third world, so it was very very challenging. I stayed in a hotel, you know, maybe 3-star, you know, hotel. They provided the food and everything like that, but cold showers, didn't have my own wash and dry, so I'm literally having to wash my clothes in my shower and kind of just hang up, you know what I'm saying, my stuff around, um, you know, my hotel room, and then you're eating there at the restaurant, but it's not like you're eating outside, you know what I'm saying? So they'll have kind of like buffet and it's all the flies and stuff like that, and then the floor, when it rains, the humidity, the floor becomes very very slippery, and it's during the summertime, so it's extremely hot over there. So you're just dripping in sweat where you really need like 2 and 3, you know, uniforms. But it was an experience. It definitely, because I was only over there a month before then signing a contract to go over and play in Italy again, because it was the lockout in the league and start back up until December. I didn't have the luxury of sitting around waiting. I'm like, look, I still need to play. I still need to make money. And then, I'm still young. So, nothing is guaranteed for me. So, hey, if this is money on the table, contract on the table, look, I'm going to take it. My experience over in Italy was phenomenal. These are places, even Italy and France, so to speak, because these are places. I was in the home of Romeo and Juliet in
Really?
Verona, Italy. Yeah, and it's like this is stuff that we read about in school, and now I'm here and being able to experience the culture and the food and everything like that was phenomenal. It was an adjustment. I mean, you got these long 14-hour, bus rides, and you come from the NBA because when you play overseas, and I'm not sure for everybody, but when you stay on the road, you got a roommate, right? And so that was different. And the rooms are tiny. So I remember, being in a little room and I'm literally looking at my teammate and he over in his boxes. I'm like, bro, come on, man. Like, he can literally stretch out his arm and touch my bed. And I'm like, man, you got to put on some clothes, man. Like, and he's snoring and, what I'm saying? It's just different things like that. Like you just wasn't used to, because that takes you back to college days. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how I work. But now, it's like, man, I'm a pro. I played in the NBA. I'm not used to this. You know what I'm saying? I'm not used to now we fly on the plane and you're waiting. You know what I'm saying? You got to go through the whole security. Like in the NBA, we went straight to the plane and you on a big plane, you got room. That was something very, very different. And then practicing twice a day, I think was the biggest thing. Our training camp was like up in the mountains, very, very hot over in Italy. And we practiced, like I said, twice a day. And you only play once a week over in Italy. And I think in France too as well. I played in the second division both times. Obviously, if you're playing like Euro Cup, you're playing maybe 2 or 3 games. But if you play bad one game, you got to wait all the way until next Friday to kind of redeem yourself. So it's just nothing but practice in between. So that was tough. I wasn't a big video game, player, so I didn't take like a video PlayStation or anything like that. I stopped playing video games like in like middle school. But what I did take was like my DVDs and stuff like that. I'm a big movie guy. And that was something that I was able to do. I had a great experience over in France, going to Paris and on days off. And then I took the fast train to London. We won a championship in France, so that made it even sweeter. I love the Philippines, probably my favorite from the standpoint, they really treat you, it's set up like the NBA. And it's only for like 2.5, maybe 3 months max. I get my own driver. It's really Americanized in terms of the restaurants and stuff like that too, because I'm very picky in terms of the things that I like to eat. And then the arena where we played, the main arena, is where they had the Thrill in Manila. When they had that fight with Ali and everything like that. So the fan base, I mean, the games would be, you would have double headers. You would have like maybe a game at 4 and then another game at like 8 or something like that. And it was just really, really dope. I'm appreciative of all because all taught me something that even though we all come from different backgrounds, ethnicities, we all have that same round ball. That's what brings us together. And so to experience the culture over in the Philippines, I went to my teammate's house and we ate on banana leaves with our hands. Probably the most fascinating things that I had to experience, over in the Philippines and just in the culture and really embracing the culture taught me a lot.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Philippines because one of my buddies, Chris Newsom, plays over there right now, and he's a pretty big player over there. And so I'm friends with Kenny Thomas, former NBA player Kenny Thomas, and Kenny's close with Chris as well. And Chris was telling us, he goes, "If you guys ever come visit, my driver will pick you up." And I said, "Your driver?" Right. Like I didn't realize he had. I go, Kenny goes, "You have a driver? I don't even have a driver." He played in the NBA for 11 years. So we were laughing, but he told us very similar stories. I didn't realize how big basketball is over there. I mean, he says it's huge. I didn't know that, and I didn't realize how many people are in the Philippines. I mean, he was telling us all the statistics, and basketball is huge over here. So it was very interesting hearing that, and your story goes right along with what he said too. And he loves it. He still plays there. He's playing right now, I think, and he just loves it over there. So it's very interesting to hear that story. And I think it's cool for a guy like you. I mean, the guys I had on the podcast that played in the NBA and overseas, to me, have the most interesting stories because they saw it on different levels, And I had Pete Chilcutt on the podcast who played back in the 90s for the Rockets, for the back-to-back championship Rockets. And he said that he came back from Italy. He actually left his team in Italy, and he thought he was going to retire from basketball. And that's when someone called him and said, "Hey, Rudy Tomjanovich wants to work you out tomorrow." And he goes, "I just happened to work out the next day, and I made the team. We won the championship." So he goes, but he was talking about his overseas experience toughened him up and how it helped him when he got back into the NBA and played for the Rockets. So it was interesting hearing his stories. I want to get post basketball and your book, Defend the Dream. How did you come up with this? And, what was the idea behind it? And kind of take us through it, and where can people find the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'm a firm believer to whom much is given, much is required. I'm a man that often reflects on the things that happen throughout my life, the good, the bad, the indifferent. And when I sit back and think about all the good that's happened in my life, it far outweighs the bad. I mean, I can't even measure that. And I think about what God has done throughout my life. I just felt like, man, when you've been given so much, you will be selfish and you will be a fool not to want to give back. Not only to want, but to be intentional in giving back. And so for me, it was one of those things that I had been putting off for so long. I always said I wanted to write a book to kind of tell my story to empower and inspire others to pursue their dream. And so when I was playing, this is at the end of my career, I was playing over in Argentina. I was 31 at the time, and I'm playing really well. My body is great. I'm probably in the best shape of my life that I've been in a long time. Everything is hitting on all cylinders for me. I'm shooting the ball. I'm doing like everything. Obviously, the competition is different, but it was some pros, you know what I'm saying, guys that played. I remember J.R. Gittens was over there in Argentina. There was some other guys that played, some really, really good guys. And obviously it was, I think one guy, if I'm not mistaken, is from Argentina. He's with the Denver Nuggets now. The point guard.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. The backup for, yeah.
And so I played against, some of these teams that they played for and they won championships with. So like I said, it's a very, very respected league over there. But unfortunately, I tore my Achilles. I think before, had I been younger, because I went through a period where I tried to go over to China and got cut over there, and I was devastated. That was probably one of the lowest points in my career, and I questioned God during that time. Now you fast forward 6 years later, I have a injury, and I don't question God. I'm not like I'm mad or angry with God. I'm like, man, God, why you? I just said, okay, God, I know I'm gonna get through this. What do you want me to do now? At that very moment, while I'm sitting in bed in my hotel room with my leg propped up on like 3 pillows because my Achilles is torn, it's like he spoke to me and said, okay, it's time. And so right then and there, it was like, okay, let me work on this book. And it took 2 years to do. I had a co-author. I had someone help me put together all of my ideas and some quotes and things and stuff like that, and basically went through a whole interview process. And like I said, it took 2 years. Someone that I went to high school with, Shekinah Bolden, got to shout her out, my co-author, for helping me put together this book. And so the book is called Defend the Dream, the ultimate playbook to achieve any dream in life. So it's not a basketball book, but it's a book about life. It's whether you want to be a scientist, a doctor, a nurse, engineer, writer, singer, whatever it is that you have aspirations of being. How do you pursue that dream and knowing that there are going to be obstacles? So I talk about intimate details of things that happened throughout my childhood with my mom being incarcerated and being separated from her, my parents divorced, because the reality is we all are going to have some type of obstacles that we had to overcome. And so these obstacles that I talk about in my book, I feel like are universal. I have, doubt. I have the naysayers. I have fear. I have rejection. You know what I mean? All these things. And I talk about, okay, look, this is how I overcame it. And maybe you can pull, some type of experience or lessons that will help you on your journey, when you come across something. And so inside the book, it has workbook questions for the reader to answer in real time. They can go to mariowest.com to purchase the book. And so it's something that I'm very, very proud about. And I wish I had did it while I was playing in the league, because in terms of like the feedback and the response, I feel like I just could have done something even bigger and better. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're relevant like that and you have access and different resources, you could have did a lot more. But, nevertheless, man, the book is still doing well. People are still purchasing the book. I've done motivational speaking at baccalaureates at high schools for teams and stuff like that. So that's something that, I do on the side, and something, again, that I'm very, very proud of.
That's very cool. And what a powerful message, because you were talking about going through, what you went through as a child. And I think a lot of people look at NBA players, especially, or any professional athlete, and they think, oh, they got it made. They made money and look what they're doing. They don't realize the challenges you guys face as human beings. I mean, we don't really look at athletes as humans all the time, because they just look like they're superhuman. They're out, we just see them in a game, but they're human beings and they go through ups and downs like everybody else. So like what you said, that to paint that and to say, look, here's all the challenges I went through and here's how I got to the NBA. I mean, the fact that story about getting cut and then coming back the next day, that's a story I can't wait to share, because I'll make that a clip on my I'll make that a clip and put it on YouTube, because that's going to get a ton of views. People love to hear those type of stories. I mean, it's, again, everybody knows it's easy when people perceive you as having it all, and they want to know the backstory. How did you get to where you got to? And they like seeing people overcome things. So I think, Mario, you're a perfect example of that. And I'm going to get the book myself because I'm looking forward to reading it. And I think, like you said, it's more than just basketball, because I mean, basketball is just a byproduct of your hard work, and everything you've done. So I think from Georgia Tech through the NBA through overseas, you've proven over and over again that you can come back from injuries, come back from, adversity and perform at a high level. I think that's a huge achievement. So I'm interested and I'm excited to read the book, and I can't wait to get it. And another thing I wanted to ask you about is, I believe I saw that you were the director of Off the Court for the NBPA. Explain what is Off the Court and what do you do as a director?
Yeah. So Off the Court essentially is a transition program that was created to serve and assist players following their professional career. As director of Off the Court, my job is to make sure that players, as they're getting ready to transition out of the league, or if they're recently retired, barring that they meet the criteria for our program, which is a minimum of 3 years in the NBA, and can't be retired no more than 5 years from when you last played your last professional game, whether that was overseas, NBA, or G League. So as long as you got 3 years, that's the minimum in the NBA, you qualify, for the pension and everything like that, and then you aren't retired no more than 5 years from when you last played your professional game, you qualify for Off the Court. And so Off the Court, basically, it celebrates, players' career, the phenomenal career that they've had, whether they played only 3 years or if they played 15 years. It celebrates them, but also it has created an environment that promotes stability, wellness, and growth beyond their post-NBA career. Because a lot of guys, and I'll use myself for example. I struggled. I'm going to be real with you. I struggled mentally, emotionally, financially, because at 31, still fairly young, but I'm kind of hitting that downward spiral, what I'm saying, in terms of my career. But I had expected and I had lined up in my mind. I said, you know what? I'm going to go on a 3 to 4 year run where I'm going to make the most money that I can, because I'm feeling, that's how good my body's feeling. But sometimes God has other plans and life happens, Father Time. Either you leave the game or the game leaves you. Unfortunately, I didn't leave the game on my own terms, and the game had left me, because once I tore my Achilles, being the type of player I am, I couldn't do what made me great and what made teams want to sign me and pay me. So Off the Court, essentially, we have a number of resources internally, from career programs. We have mental health, guys, struggling with that aspect. We have financial literacy, the brotherhood, just being connected, with the players. There's so many things that the players go through. And again, I struggle with it. And to paint the perfect picture in my mind is Batman versus Bruce Wayne, right? We put on that uniform, 7 o'clock, we like Batman. That's how I felt like I was viewed. We a superhero, But just because you play in the NBA and you mentioned this, people expect, like, man, you should be Bruce Wayne, even though but the realization was, it's like, man, I'm no longer Batman and I'm not even Bruce Wayne. I don't have this type of money. Like, I still need to work. And so we trying to figure out, like, who am I? And so that's what I mean by the Batman versus Bruce Wayne. So I didn't even want to go out to the community and everything like that, because I didn't have a job and I didn't know what I was going to be doing. So that's why it's really a privilege and an honor for me to be working as director, because it's something that I'm very, very passionate about. I'm trying to help guys figure it out, what they want to do, and not only what they want to do, but what's going to be fulfilling for them. Because I feel like once they find something that they're passionate about, whether that's coaching, broadcasting, maybe even running their own business, everything else is going to align, what I'm saying? Because it's an adjustment, in all aspects. And so again, Off the Court, man, is something that I'm proud to be director of. And it's basically helping the guys, tap into their potential off the court and making sure that they're aware of all the resources that we have internally to help them guide that in that decision-making process.
Well, Mario, I love that you're getting into mental health as well, because I'm big into that. I'm a life coach on the side, and I do a lot of coaching when it comes to mindset and mental health. And I've gone through my struggles with anxiety and depression, and ups and downs, and nobody would know it from the outside if you saw me. I have a lot of different friends that would have no idea until I came out and told them I'm struggling. So, and I, Kevin Love and a lot of athletes now are coming out and talking about how they're struggling. So I think to have that mental health and that mindset aspect of it is so crucial, because like you said, you're going to go through your ups and downs. And when you take off that jersey, I mean, you're back to being a human being. Yeah. For those couple hours, you might be focused on the court, but we're all humans, and people go through all types of stuff that we don't even know about. So I think the mental health version, aspect of it is becoming stronger and stronger now with people. And then people are taking notice of that and how important that is. Because if you don't have your mind right, I don't care how talented you are or what you're doing, you're not going to be in a good spot. So you have to have your mindset right. You have to have your mental health at a certain level. And I know what it's like to be down, like depressed. And it takes happiness and joy out of your life. And that's so I didn't know that was part of it. That's really cool. And I like to look more into that, actually, because I think that's a really unique thing you guys are doing. And I love the fact that you're celebrating everybody's career, the guys who may only played 3 years, or the guys who played 15. So that's really cool. I didn't know much about it. I had read about it. And I knew you were the director, but I wasn't really sure what it was. So that's really cool for the people to listen to go check it out. And especially for any former players who are listening, very, very cool stuff there. And the last thing I want to get to, and I ask every guest this question. I always love hearing the answer. So 30 years from now, 25, 30 years from now, you're on a beach somewhere, you're retired, semi-retired, you're hanging out. You look back at your life and what do you want people to know about the legacy of Mario West?
That he was a giver, that he was intentional in giving, but more importantly, that he was intentional in serving. He was a servant. He was someone that would serve. So even though you're speaking of the job off the court, some guys don't fit the criteria. I still try to find a way where I can assist them and help them. You know what I mean? It's not like, look, man, I can't help you. You know what I mean? That's something that I'm passionate about. That's who I am. Mario West is a server. He's intentional about serving others and helping them, with hope, the acronym, for hope, helping others prosper easily. That is something that I want, for everybody, from a peaceful standpoint, from a prosperity standpoint, a health standpoint. I want to help them, assist them, because I feel like if I serve and do my job in serving, and I'm intentional in doing that, then someone else is going to cross the person that I just served. And the end goal is for that person to remember, you know what, someone just served me. Someone was just intentional by helping me. So now I have the opportunity, let me do that for someone else, right? And then when they do it for that other person, then it's almost a domino effect. So, when I'm sitting up on the beach, that's what I like. I love to hear when people say, you know what, man, you had this conversation, or you gave me some advice, or you did X, Y, and Z, and it really, really helped me. Because I don't play the game of basketball. We play the game of basketball for what? What's the trophy, the award, right? The
O'Brien. Yep.
O'Brien, right? Now, what I do from a work standpoint, and even, unwork related, is for the reward, knowing that everything that I've been given, now that I've helped someone else, achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, just in life in general, to be the best person that they can be. So that's what my legacy will be about.
That's quite a legacy. And you're right. I think I'm a big believer in karma and giving back as well. And not just to get it back yourself, but I think it feels good to give to people. And I think, every time I look at my life, and years ago, I actually wrote a bunch of letters to people around me that, just thanking them for what they've done for me in my life. Out of nowhere, I just decided to do it. And it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, because they came back to me, and some of them are crying, and, it was aunts and grandmas and things like that. But I did it. I didn't do it for any recognition, or I just did it because I wanted to thank them. And I never had done that before. As a young kid, you're kind of naive. You don't understand. So I think that aspect of it is so important in giving back. And when you do give back, for those listening, I've seen it come back tenfold in my life so it goes both ways. And I think giving back, and like you said, when you're rewarded with something, how can you help other people get to where you got? I love that. So I think that's a great legacy. And, you're well on your way to doing that. And I want to thank you for coming on the show, Mario. It's really been an honor having you on and listening to your stories. And again, I had followed your career back from Georgia Tech days, but I never knew about a lot of the other things you did with the book and what you're doing now, and even overseas. So it's really been an honor having you on the show and talking about your career and going over your life.
Well, man, I really appreciate you having me on, man. Definitely look forward to maybe doing it again. And, for all the people out there listening, man, y'all make sure that y'all continue to check out, man. Great podcast.
I appreciate that, Mario. And we definitely want to have you on again. This has been a lot of fun. So you have a great story to tell.
Thank you.
So, absolutely. We'll keep in touch, man.
All right, man.